everyone. Welcome back to another exciting episode of the iConis podcast, where the icon is. Before we jump into that part, you got to know who we're all about, right? So first of all, you know me. I'm Barry 3D Carter. I'm one of the hosts on the iConis podcast. And on my side, as always, the man, the myth, the legend, my best friend, and my cousin, the one and only
DJ Rod C. Good day, good afternoon, good morning to everyone, wherever you may be. You know what? Barry didn't say it. I'm going to say it. Today's episode on the iConis podcast is the Superman and Lois finale episode. Yes, we're going to be talking about the final episode. The Arrowverse is coming to an end. But we will speak about it right now. Okay, not right now, but now. But
after these messages.
Not now, but after manners, but right now. There you go.
Manners maketh the man, Rod, as you like to say.
Manners
and real quick, remember, you got to support the comic book stores to give us all the stuff that we talk about on this show and other shows, right? So it's not just our show that talks about that. So please go and support your comic book stores and make sure to show them some love. So you got to always check out WoW. You got to check out WoW Comics out in Kitchener. You got to check out Check Swings out in Montreal. Tell the guys we go and we said hi. Please, that is awesome. Also, you got to we a little bit rusty. We a little bit rusty. If you want to find out what I'm gonna be doing on a regular basis, you can always go to my website at barry3d.com. That's barry3d.com to find where I'm going to be for any kind of live shows and anything updates on our channel and our show here too. So that is for sure. We are also a part of the Subculture Podcast Network. So make sure to go and check out our show along with 5 other podcasters that are there, from Rebel Rock Radio to Trekker's Delight to Dork Wars to Entertainment Rants. I think I've got it. I know I'm missing one more and it's off the top of my head, but you see it on the screen. Go and send them a follow. Let them know you heard about them on the iConis podcast. Absolutely. And man, where can we find you?
As I always say, you can find me on the World Wide Web. You can find me on the world of Instagram at Mr. Rod C. You can also find me in the world of TikTok. TikTok, we don't stop because we rock about the clock. Okay, you see, I got it backwards. I did it reverse. I normally do TikTok later on. We're doing TikTok right now. You can find me on TikTok at DJ Rod C. DJ Rod C1. That's DJ Rod C1. You can't forget the one. No. Then you also can find me on the world of Twitch. That's what I meant to say. Twitch.tv/DJ Rod C. Twitch.tv/DJ Rod C. Yeah, that's where you find me.
Wow.
So many words. So
little time. On top of that, if you guys want to find out where we're going to be at or what we're doing, please go and check out Podbean. So that's what we use for all our hostings. For if you're not finding us on YouTube, so remember, like, subscribe, and share. Find us on YouTube, and then go to Podbean if you want to download the audio episodes, and you can find us at Podbean. So iconis.podbean.com. That is our page, and you can find it wherever you get your streaming from. I did realize I made a little bit of an error, so that's my apology to all of you. Our stuff usually goes up on Spotify, but I haven't uploaded it as an MP3. I was uploading them as MP4s, and Spotify does not like MP4s. So I'm going to go back to converting those files to MP3, so you'll see them pick up again. Thank you very much, Rob, for bringing this to my attention. Okay. And of course, if you too want to have yourself a podcast and do whatever you need to do, and you need any kind of graphic work done, there's only one man and one man you should turn to only, and that man is
J Bird Digital Art.
Mr. Jason Reese, J Bird Digital Art. That's who you got to reach out to. You tell him you heard about him on the iConis podcast, and he will give you a discount on the work. All right, Jay, thank you so much also for being a participant, loving our shows, liking our shows, sharing our shows. Jay, we really appreciate all the work you've done behind the scenes. And we should have you come on here sooner. You only been on once, man. We got to see you again and hopefully put a smile on your face. I know you're going through your thing. So yeah. I was gonna say this one is you know what, we're gonna dedicate this episode to Norman Bates. All right, Jay, this one's for you. Okay, all right. Yeah.
I know people confused. Ain't Norman on the other side? Yeah, don't worry about it. Norman's a friend to all.
Norman Bates. So Norman Bates is Jay's dog. So he recently, unfortunately, Norman has
I'm here
transitioned
thinking Norman
to.
Osborn. Yeah, people are like,
Oh, right,
why
right,
did you
right.
just say? I said, I went the other side. I'm thinking Norman. Norman goes, it's Osborn. Ah, Osborn.
No, no,
Ah.
no, no, no. So we're
Losing
going
my
to
mind.
dedicate
No,
this one to Norman. We know
gotcha,
it's
gotcha.
been a loss for the family. Norman has transitioned to the other side. So
Ah,
yes, our
my
condolences, and
condolences.
here we go. And hopefully
Condolences.
this episode will bring a smile to your face and know that Norman's in all our hearts. Okay, Rod,
Excellent.
as you said before, this episode we are not fan casting anyone in this episode. We're going to be talking about the last episode that just came out last week.
Woo!
So once again, if you haven't watched it, heavy spoilers, heavy spoilers, heavy
Just gonna say,
spoilers.
just
Y'all
gonna
been
say,
warned. Y'all been
you've been
warned.
wrong.
So
You've
on
been
the
wrong.
Iconis podcast, the icon is very simply Superman and Lois, or so long,
Series
super
finale.
couple,
Yes.
season finale, super couple. So we all know the story of Superman. We all know the
Mm-hmm.
story of the CW Arrowverse, however you want to put it down together.
Mm-hmm.
I will say this off the top. I'm more of a Batman fan. Truly, I am
Mm-hmm.
more of a Batman fan. And I become a Superman fan because of a couple of people. One was one of our guests on here, which was Derwin, because Derwin was
Yep.
huge into Superman. So thank you very much. While I was more into Batman. So Derwin liked to fly, and I like to drive around and be in a cave, even though he got his car first. All right, cool. And then second of all, our boy Sean. So Sean, who sent in that question one time and had us tongue twisted.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for your service, sir. He's a huge Superman fan. He's got multiples of Superman T-shirts with this all different. Anyways, so shout out to you all. And I will say that Tyler's rendition of
Mm.
Superman on Lois and Superman and Lois, not Lois, Superman and Lois.
Yeah.
Finally, everyone's always saying, "Hey, we need a good." They haven't really transitioned, a true essence of Superman. And I think, like, don't get me wrong, I liked all the ones before it. Christopher Reeves, Henry Cavill, George. I like them all, but currently they stepped their game up with Tyler stepped his game up with this portrayal he did of Superman.
Yeah.
Amazing, uh, top of the hat off to you, sir. Well done, well deserved,
Yeah.
and the story behind it is a lot more compelling than what we saw on screen. So that was my thing. I mean, the way the episode broke down, it gave everything for everybody. I was happy with it. I liked how it started off by action. It built up to it. It did not disappoint. And I look at it as it broke it down in three parts. So we'll get into that a little bit more. But Rod, what are your thoughts on the Superman and
I
Lois?
agree. So Superman and Lois is definitely a different rendition. It's a different viewpoint of the character. Like you said, it's the the not saying the realistic one, but at
Right.
least they were coming from a different standpoint of time. Let's look from a family standpoint. Let's look at Clark and Lois now trying to say, okay, we have these two known characters, these great known IPs. We've all tried to figure out how would the dynamics of these two coming together, having a family, and just saying, well, we've always made it that they're going to be together. They're in love. They're going to get married. And then most times it's silence upon the earth at that point. No one really talks
True.
about after the fact. I will say this is you got to work with the times, and I don't want to make it sound like I'm going to ramble and babble on, but at least you got to understand that the times that these things are created, when they did it before, the closest one to this would definitely be Lois and Clark with Dean Cain. That was the that was a great aspect at that time. Again, that was like 90s. That was like late 90s in that
Late
regard.
90s. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, and that's why I go back to saying that at the time, you gotta give for what you got at the time of television. That was it. So now writing has been more in depth. They're definitely be more creative, going into different layers and not having a one dimensional thought on people's uh, ideology of certain things. So they definitely went deep. So I have basically been doing my best. Honestly, I believe I've watched every episode since the beginning of this series. I believe I have. So there's very rare that I miss it. And I really do look forward to seeing what the different dynamics and everything like that. Again, the transition from when it went from um from the Arrowverse when it kind of built on their own. So
Yeah,
I like what they've done with it. And again, like Barry's saying, they've built up, they've built up, they've built up. They've basically made this show into something like you're saying, wow, I don't think I've ever thought of that particular concept or something. They really went into it and just gave it a deeper lore and gave you some more foundational base to it. So I definitely liked it. So definitely, like we said, we're gonna get
absolutely.
um into this episode and just kind of break off from there.
Ooh, so first of all, I mean, everyone knows the story of Superman. Okay, he comes from Krypton. He was created, by two guys here that, and they came up the whole story of Krypton. So here's just some basic facts. That we all know came from another planet, raised by the Kents, becomes a man, realizes he's from a different planet. He's got powers, goes to Metropolis, however rendition you want to take about it, becomes a reporter, blends in, acts a little bit clumsy, a little bit goofy, so people wouldn't think that someone of that power would be acting that goofy. And he has to put on this facade to carry on to hide his identity because the Kents told him that if people on Earth found out that he was from another planet, he was an alien, they would hound him down for his days. They would want to dissect him, and they put that fear, and this is very important. They
Yes.
instilled that fear in him, but it had to be there because at the time, we as a populace attack things that are different. We don't understand.
Hmm.
We want to know.
Right.
You have people behind you, and you have people waiting for the other shoe to drop, as the expression goes. So his
Yeah.
parents did their best to raise him that way, regardless of what it is. If you look at the Earth 2 or Earth 1, and why'd I say that way? Because I've said it before on this show. When Superman, Batman, all of them came about, especially Superman. Superman worked at the Daily Star. Superman did not fly, he just jumped, he ran. He did not have all the powers per se. It's when they redid everything and they modernized it, they added to his powers, they made him at work at the Daily Planet and so forth. So, if you look at those original runs of Superman on Earth 2 and Earth 1, Earth 2 Superman was the one that got married. Earth 2 Superman was part of the Justice Society. He had a little bit of gray hair at one point. He almost retired. Him and Lois got married. So if you used to read the comic books Superman Family, right? If you read the
Hmm.
Superman Family by DC Comics that they put out, and we talked about a whole family universe too, you would see that they used to say the adventures of Mr. and Mrs. Superman. And that
Yep.
was the Earth 2 counterparts, right? Of
Yep.
that. So let's keep that in mind, right? It's only more past years, more recently, that Earth 1 or New 52 or whatever, Lois knows that Superman and Clark are the same person, right?
Right.
That was portrayed in the Justice League with Henry Cavill, Man of Steel. Okay, we get that. We get that. But the original idea of finally marrying them
Hmm.
was on them getting married was the Earth 2 one. So even if you read the adventure comics, you see, Superman and Lois, and he's flying off with her in the car. That wasn't an Earth 1 tale, right? That was an Earth 2 tale, and they just kind of slid it under there in Action Comics, if I remember correctly. So when you read it, you're like, oh, okay, Daily Star, got you. All right, you guys got us. So I like that. That now takes us into where there's a lot of great Superman stories out there, like every other
Hmm.
character,
Yep.
and good on the writers for taking key elements that would stand out to build a series. So they took it and said, okay, well, first of all, we're going to marry the couple, right? If you look at Lois and Clark, the Superman adventures, they
Hmm.
weren't married, I think, till the very end. But this one came out the gate. They made their appearance in Supergirl. Then they came out and said, oh, they're married. And by the way, we're giving a kid. Now, with the Arrowverse ending, Oliver Queen becomes the Spectre.
Yep.
Crisis Infinite Earth. They
That's
do
quite an
that whole
effort. Yep.
thing, right? And then they change that dynamic.
Yes.
And then when everything was said and done, Diggle, right, from the Arrowverse, from Arrow, had a son, and he had a daughter, and then next thing you know,
Yeah.
after Barry
He
did
had a son.
Flashpoint, it was changed to a son. He was like, "What did you do, Barry?"
Yeah.
Right? So this one, okay, they took him out the Arrowverse, they put him in their own universe,
Yep.
and instead of having him one son, they gave him two. That there alone is first, Lois and Clark got together. So here's a couple of things, and then we talked about the show. One, Lois Lane falls in love with Clark Kent, not
Yep.
Superman. every comic book made her fall in love with Superman. And then she was obsessed to find out who he was. Clark came into the paper. They met. It was love at first sight. And he won her over as Clark Kent while still being Superman secretly. So she had no idea. And I like the idea that gives Lois more character. She's not
Yeah.
shallow. It's not like, oh my God, I want to be with this guy that can fly and bullets bounce off of him. Hey, she fell in love with nerdy Clark Kent. Everyone in the office looked and it's like, really, Lois? You're a military brat. Your father is a 4-star general or 5-star, he's a general. And,
Right.
and out of all the let's say macho men around you, this is who you're attracted to. You're the complete opposite, unbeknownst that she just married the strongest man on the planet.
Right.
Come on now, that there made me like Lois Lane a lot more because I was never a huge Lois Lane fan. I always found it a little bit shallow that, okay, it's like women say, I only want to date a guy that's 6'3" and tall or over 6 feet. And anyone under 6 feet is referred to as a short king. It's like, okay, you're missing the picture by looking up all the time, but that's the way it is, right? So she always came across that way. It always gave Lois that, oh, I only want to date a guy that's, can do X, Y, and Z. And the only one that was attainable for her was someone that could fly, stop bullets, travel through time, run as fast as a flash. Like she had to get the best of the best. And of course, you married the best for you, but that's how it always made seem Lois. And then Clark was just more the annoyance personality. So that's step one there for me. Right. And I'm just breaking certain things down. So, what are your thoughts on that aspect there, Rod? We'll get more into it as we go on.
No, yeah, definitely. Like you great that you brought up the Crisis in Infinite Earth. Just the segue of because I can always remember that point when Lois on a call with him, Clark is flying, and like saying something to the effect like, make sure you bring home diapers for the babies. Babies, scene cut. So at that point, I've always thought like, we're gonna have fun with this one, and realizing. Now, although it's Crisis on Infinite Earth, and they're basically making it seem like they brought the universe by itself all together, this is an alternate universe that we've never been into. So I've always been very interested in watching this show as much as possible. And I like the fact that you start to see the different dynamics, as Barry said. The writing point of view was to create this story through the lens of Clark humanity, through the lens of Clark basically being an individual and saying, okay, how is it to be someone who is as powerful, who has greatly revered, who has loved on everybody on the world, and basically say, I need to be able to turn that off per se, or find that work-life balance. And that's exactly what this is. To me, in this show is really trying to see the work-life balance of Clark Kent, not Superman,
right?
Of Clark Kent. That's what the difference is, and that's what I liked about it. So when you now see the storyline, we'll go into again really spot checks because we're really trying to focus on the finale. But you start to understand at a certain point, Clark has twins. The boys, the show starts off. The boys now are like in their mid-late teens, and you're now looking from the standpoint, Lois and Clark realizing at a certain point, I'm going to have to let these boys know who I am. And now you're now learning. Now we're throwing in another spinning plate, how to balance work, life, family, hiding who he is from his family. Now he has to bring his children into that mix and making them understand this is who I am. This is why you don't see me every time, and whatever the case to be. If I look like I'm there and I'm gone, father's out helping somebody. This is the reason why. So we're trying to build that dynamic, and how I like it that you see going forward, the whole story brings us to how the world perceives Clark as Superman, how Clark basically tries to find a balance of making sure that his house is taken care of, his family, his community, his world is taken care of in that, not say in that order, but you can see that he definitely was trying his best to be not only the Man of Steel, but the man of the house and being a good father figure and a good husband.
Yeah, and you hit it all on the head. And now let's talk about his sons real quick to give a little bit of their
Mm-hmm.
feedback, right? So these two boys grow up one two different dynamics, two different dynamics. So first of all,
Woo!
the boys didn't even realize who they're named after, right? So it's
Yeah.
Jonathan and Jordan. Jor. All right. Okay. So unbeknownst to
Jordan,
the boys,
Jor-El.
that's right. So literally
Jordan,
son of Jordan.
Jor-El. Son of Jor-El. Jordan.
So he's got the two boys. One is
Mm-hmm.
more, I guess he feels, so one, no problem. Social butterfly, sports jock, center of attention. He's got it handled. He's the star of the football team. Classic American, right? Like that's Americana
Mm-hmm.
right there. And now the other side of Americana is the ones who are dealing with mental health. And that's what Jordan was dealing with throughout the whole episodes. Insecurity, mental health. And it
Mm-hmm.
was interesting that they made Jordan the one who developed his powers first. There was
Right.
probably a little bit of rivalry. It made one a little bit cocky. So it made Jordan come out from his shell, but it made him a little bit cocky. And then he had to bring it back down. And then he kind of associated bad things happening when he used his powers, but it wasn't because of his powers, because he got a little bit cocky and he got caught up in the limelight. It was the first time that he was the spotlight. Encounter his brother Jonathan, maybe at times being a little bit jealous, but he checked himself real quick and he was happy for his brother because he
Yeah.
knew that, hey, coming up, I'm a football star. I'm the one that women flock to because I'm out there and you're always in the corner. So you're not only under dad's shadow, unbeknownst to him, you're under my shadow as my twin brother. So
Yeah.
now that you're finally stepping on the spotlight, it's like, yeah, I wish I had powers, but I'm happy for you. And that led to some storylines and it made the brothers stronger. And it all leads to the ending. So we went through 4 seasons. For 3 seasons,
Mm-hmm.
it was hinted at moments that Jonathan had powers, but it only really came out in the last season.
Yeah.
Now, what I really liked is one, Clark and Lois turned around and named the boys after his two father figures. So one was named
Yeah.
after his adoptive father, and one was named after his biological father.
Right.
And I wish they would have talked about that a little bit more, even if it was just one or two lines when the
Mm-hmm.
boys did discover their powers. And this, I said, not hating on the show. I'm just simply saying it would have been also nice to
Yeah.
say,
Yeah. Yeah.
by the way, you boys, you wonder why you got your names? Well, you're named after my adoptive dad who raised me here on Earth, and you're named after my biological dad who saved my life by sending me to Earth to give me a second chance at life because the planet was doomed. So
Right.
there you go.
Right.
And then for another one that I was always hoping to see, is I always hope to see these two characters. I had the names, and that is Flamebird and Nightwing, the original
Oh,
Nightwing. Yes, yes, because those were Kandorian heroes, Kryptonian heroes, and I thought that they would at least adopt that mantle or code name of Flamebird and Nightwing, and that's what I was hoping for. That's fine.
right.
So the boys go through their journey to everything. They develop their powers just in time. Okay, great. And then we get down to that last episode where as I like to say, the popo hits the fan. All right, that one's for you, Kevin.
Yeah.
And so now in the last episode, then we got Lois that went through a journey dealing with
Mm-hmm.
cancer, dealing with putting out a story that put person Lex Luthor in jail for one of the crimes he didn't commit. If Lex Luthor did 20 crimes, he went to jail. Or if he did out of 20 crimes, one of them wasn't his. So 19 crimes Lex Luthor did, but the one that actually got him behind bars was the one he did not do. And that was because of Lois writing the story a certain way, and people just took advantage of it. So it came down to the morality of, do you do something questionable, put away someone despicable for the greater good, or
Yeah.
do you take it back and then try again? And we clearly see that Lois and Clark went with hey, we made a mistake. Let's take it back. He's going to be angry. He will slip up. We'll try again. And it put their family through hell, but it made them stronger. So they did the right thing, A, B, and C, right?
Right.
And then Clark had to go, and that's why I mentioned this before, his fear of being told, don't tell anybody your secret, to when he was only sure that he proposed to Lois and Lois said yes, And then he went out to the farm, and this is before, but this happened this last season. They showed it in a flashback, and he takes the glasses off. He goes, "So Lois, is something I have to tell you." She goes, "Oh no, what?" Right? Because everything's been going great. He takes the glasses off, and then he starts to slowly levitate to the second floor of height wise, second floor of his parents' house outside of the farm. And Lois is looking at him and like, "No way." He's like, "Yeah. By the way, you fell in love with Clark. You were marrying Clark. All is good. P.S. I'm Superman." What?
It's a two
What?
package deal. It's a two package deal. Sale, sale, sale.
Exactly. Black Friday sale. So that added more to the depth of their story, the depth of their love,
Yeah.
because Superman, or let's go down, Clark Kent never faltered on who he loved. There's only two women. He's maybe dated more, but there's only two women that stood the test of time for him. And it was the double L's. It was Lana Lang, right? And when he was in Smallville, but when he realized he wanted to get out of Smallville and see more of the world, he fell in love with Lois.
Yep.
So if Lois wasn't there, he would have married Lana, and he wouldn't have not known any of the better, and he would have still been happy, and Lana would have been happy for him. She took a little bit more of adjusting, finding out of his powers, but that, of course, keep in mind, that's through high school, her going through all that, dating with Clark, and finding out later on, and she went from the role of, and nicely, I mean, she went from the role of being his love to being his best friend. Right? They had that connection, so they made it a little bit different, and there was no jealousy from either side. No jealousy from Lois, no jealousy from Lana, because Clark handled himself like a gentleman, right? So there was no games, they never went back with, oh, she tried to pick him back up, no flirt. Nope. She moved on with her life. She had two kids. And then we get, so all these storylines are coming in, John Stewart, John Henry,
John Iron.
With his daughter, how they integrated that Lois was his wife from another universe.
Right.
Okay, all into it. So now we get to the last episode. I mean, it's still more to unpack, but we get to the last episode. And the last episode, we know because of how they built up, the ending of the last episode in season 3, Superman fights Doomsday. They both have the iconic punch. Screen fades to black. And then season 4, episode 1, it picks right up. The punch gets thrown. Yep. Great battle for what they have. And then a couple of fights. Okay, Superman dies. Like, Doomsday punches the crap out of him, opens up his chest, rips out his heart, and takes off with it.
Yeah. Because that was his mission. His mission is bring me the beating heart of Superman. Now, I just want to jump in real quickly and just to make a clarification with Doomsday. Now, the reason why I want to just go back, Barry said at the end of season 3. So let's go into the beginning or the middle of season 3 when Doomsday was introduced. He was really introduced as AKA Bizarro.
Yes.
For the Bizarro universe is Clark Kent, is Superman from the Bizarro universe. Now, the reason why I want to say that is because due to whatever was happening in that particular, I'm not going to get into it, he got transferred over to our universe. He came over. He didn't come from the same universe as on John Henry Irons, no. But he came over. So at least I want to let us know there's another person from another temporal universe in this world. Now, he's on this side. They were fought in the battle, whatever the case would be, as Superman versus Bizarro. Superman defeats Bizarro, but then Lex gets a hold of him and basically retains him and keeps Bizarro. The reason why I want to get to that is because at a certain point, Lex started to realize how to manipulate and how to control him. Because at this point, the effects of being on this side was really messing up with the Bizarro senses, and his whole mentality and his whole mental state was just being just more introverted and just being more, not introverted, but just being more just angry and everything like that. So Lex basically, through particular manipulation and actions that he did, let's just say that he had to kill him, and when he came back to life again, he just got more stronger, more angrier, and more deformed in that sense. So This is why you see him as being the Bizarro type of gray type of chipped face, and then basically turned into what we now recognize as Doomsday. Now, the reason why I want to get that, but later on you'll see why. But I just wanted to make sure that the clarification that you see that Doomsday was someone that we knew was on the side of good in his universe. He was Superman on his universe. He was a good individual. He came to this side, and just the effects of being on this side of the plane just kind of, unfortunately, like just didn't work well with
Warped
him,
his
and then
reality. Exactly.
it just warped his reality. So in that regard, so now you have Lex basically having control of Doomsday, and the last mission he had at the end of season three, bring me the beating heart of Superman. So now we fall into what Barry just said. Spoiler: season 4, they fight it out across Smallville, across the Earth, into the moon, and oh my goodness, we're just going interplanetary, fighting. Beautiful, people dying. Brings back Doomsday, just drops Clark's body with a big gaping chest, hole in his chest. Dropped him like saying, like, drop a mic and let's say, I don't need all this. You can take it. I'm out. And took off. Now, unfortunately, this happened right in front of in the main street, Smallville, where practically the whole city now is out seeing the fight to see what's going on. And to see this monstrous drops the lifeless body of Superman, and then all you see is Smallville citizen Lois Lane, or Lois Lane and her 2 children crying over Superman, but not crying as though, oh my gosh, oh Superman, oh my goodness, poor Superman. No, crying over as an emotional level of someone that you cared and you physically and mentally lost. And then the town started to realize, I think that's Clark. I think that's Clarky on the floor. The way they're running around, I think that's Clark. I think that's the paw. Paws on the. And then we'll get into that. Now we don't have to get into that, but you'll see that particular people started to pick that up. So I just wanted to show that part, that right now that they're fighting at the end, this town knows that Clark is Superman, and seeing that he is basically standing up not only for the world, but loving it that he's standing up for their own town. And we now come to the fact that the final season, I mean, did you jump to that? No, you were still fighting with Doomsday on the first one. His lifeless body was dead on a scenario. Then he was taken to by John Henry, quickly took him to the Fortress of Solitude, and Laura, his mother, the astral plane figuration of his mother, put him in status, and then we had him saved there. So, will we go into how do we get into the heart? You want to get into the heart real quickly?
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll touch on a couple of things.
We got to get into the heart.
Get to it. So Superman's without a heart. They're covering up, that Superman's dead is now in the papers. So just like the comic book, Superman's dead, Superman's gone. Yes. They didn't go through the whole aspect of, okay, someone's going to take up Superman's mantle. Really briefly, John Henry Irons was out there in his armor. We know he's steel. Really, there's no question about that. His daughter is taking on that role too, to help out the Super Sons, as I call them. They're out there doing what they needed to do, inadvertently. And once again, that's why I mentioned the cockiness. So Jordan gets a lead on it that Lex Luthor has the heart. He gets drawn into a trap, and I'm not going to get too much into it, but he just gets drawn into a trap. He gets his dad's heart from Lex, but then he gets jumped by Lex because I said it was all a trap. And Lex literally took the heart. Jordan's down on the ground, wipes it out of the container it's in, and then crushes it under the heel of his boot to totally destroy Superman's actual heart. Now, of course, it's in a weakened state because it's under red rays, and so this is why he can do it. That there, he's just playing evil, wicked mind games.
Yeah, and this is the show, as Barry said. They knew that the most likely be a retaliation from Lex. But once Lex was released and was saying to prove, there was no proof that he ever committed that particular crime, that he was sent away for 17 years. Lex basically made his sole mission to harass, disturb, upset Lois and Clark and their family as much as possible. So this was a way for him to basically just, pun intended, put the Man of Steel under the heel of heel of his boot by crushing his heart. So that was very traumatic. Then, of course, it did an emotional twist for Jordan. We won't get into super crazy, but you can see that he was very, as his cockiness, thinking that he'd be able to get it.
Uh-huh.
His mom and everyone said, "Don't do it." He
Don't do
still
it.
went, fell for the trap. He realized now he feels more. He puts himself in a position of blame that he's now removed any chance of his father coming back, and it just took a mental toll on him. So all I have to say is that Jordan understood what I love again about the dynamics of the writing. They started to come from a family aspect of basically there are consequences for your actions. You have an individual who knows that later on he admits that he knew he was a little bit cocky and stuff along that line, but he
Yep.
kept pushing and he realized that you have to have someone who has to learn, who has to burn to learn. So Jordan's
Burn to
aspect,
learn.
he be the individual. If burn to learn was a picture in the encyclopedia, and Jordan be like, yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. That will be Jordan. That'd be, that'd be Jordan. That'd be Jordan Kent. Yeah, my bad. My
My
bad.
bad. My bad.
My
Let the
bad.
bodies hit the
Luckily enough, his
floor.
father came out of this. But
Yep.
we'll again just to even skip ahead in that sense of him coming. How did Clark come back? We'll just get to that. I know
Yes.
it's a finale. We're just so far. We're close to the finale, people. Hold on, we're getting there.
We're getting there.
But he came back to life due to the fact that Sam, General Lang, Lois' father, sacrificed himself to. He basically injected himself with a serum that was a mixture of Superman's blood that gave his heart, gave him, I guess, enhanced, clear, but gave him enhanced type of Kryptonian DNA soaring through him. So basically, he knew he was going to die. He sacrificed his heart, so they knew they will give his heart and transplant it to Clark. So Clark, in that sense, comes back. He's not 100%, but he comes back. So I will say we can get to where do you want to go from there?
Okay.
Like I said, I watched enough. So let's go.
So more steps. So one, we realize now, and it's been mentioned in the show, that Superman gets General Lane's heart. So he's got the heart of a 60-year-old man.
Yep.
Right? It's been infused with Kryptonian DNA, which is Superman's own DNA because they use this blood sample. You realize he's not 100%. And it's also been mentioned that as time goes on, he will eventually lose his powers. They will go away. No kryptonite involved. It's just that's how they did it. So they brought him back. He's still powerful. And so we go on. So then we get now, and just before we get to the last episode, I want to do a call out. I have to do this call out because if I didn't do it, I would not like myself. In there, Tom Cavanaugh directed a couple episodes. So he played Reverse Flash in different roles within the Flash
universe. Yep.
The CD, yeah. And then he plays a character. He turns around and he comes back and he plays a reporter known as Godfrey, right? But Godfrey is not just Godfrey.
No.
He's glorious Godfrey. And if you know your research or you do your research, and for those who don't know, Godfrey is one of the new gods. Look at it. So does that mean that God and Godfrey does come to Earth? Godfrey does use media. And there was a comic book that ran 6 issues called DC Legends. So not Legends Tomorrow, DC Legends, where Godfrey turned around and he used the media, and it was done by the art was done by John Bryan, and he turned the world against the superhero community at the time. Amazing. I love John Bryan's writing. But Captain Marvel or Shazam, however you want to call him, was in this. He was the focal point along with Wonder Woman, Batman, Superman, right? But Glorious Godfrey started causing riots and all that because he was cursing him out. He also does show up in the Young Justice. So Godfrey is one of the new gods, which is Darkseid, or on that side, one of the new gods from Apocalypse. Let me get that straight. From Apocalypse. So that's Darkseid, the Sod, Calabac, right? Granny Goodness.
Yep.
And I'm a fan of the new gods, right? So does that mean that in that universe, even though it's away from the CW, that there's a potential the new gods do exist?
I believe so. When I saw that, I believe so. Who knows? If
In my
enough
mind, I'm
enough
saying
of us,
yes.
yeah, if enough of us will, write in, I'm sure we can get season 5 in another few years, and then we'll bring Darkseid in. Anything's possible. Anyways, I
Anything's
digress. We won't
possible.
get into that
But
right now. We won't get into that
you
right now.
you
Right now.
if you did Doomsday, then you got Dark. So in my mind, I don't. You all can have your opinion. For me, Dark Side lives in Superman's universe because Godfrey was there. So that means that's
Yeah.
Dark Side, that's Calabac, that's Desaad, Mighty Goodness, as I mentioned, Mantis, right? And if you got the bad guys, hey, you got to bring on
I got
Orion,
the good.
Lightway, High
Hmm.
Father, Mr. Miracle, Big Barda. That's the new gods. Okay, so that's my little thing. So now let's get down to the last episode. I know we've gone through a lot
Hmm.
and we skipped a lot, right? But we want to focus on the last episode. The writing, top tier, hats off. Thank you very much. I look at it as, three main chapters in that last 1 hour episode. So
Yeah.
before we get into it, I know I'm trying not to delay. I got to give a big shout out for the writers and everyone that worked on that show. Because keep in mind, behind the scenes, the budget got cut.
Hmm.
Harsh. All the series regulars, I would say 95% of them, let's go 96% of the season regulars were just put as guest stars, only to come back to film the scenes they needed to film, and then off they went. So the only series regulars that we had, or sorry, 95%, was Tyler. Okay, so pretty much Clark Kent, the actor who played, so Tyler who played Clark Kent, the actress that played Lois Lane, the two boys, and Lex Luthor. They were the five, it went from a cast of like 13, 14 people down to five series regulars. And then every actor came back just to do one or two episodes to wrap up their storylines and then move on. So
Right.
between the budget getting cut for the actors, budget getting cut for special effects, and everything like that, why they do it, I don't know. Look, I know it's because James Gunn's Superman is coming out. So James Gunn's, you got your hands full. And so far, rumor wise, is that the trailer got released and the executives weren't happy with the trailer that was released. And I said, that's rumor wise. I know that's what's online. Y'all can read it. So they might go back and do another Superman, like redo the Superman trailer for the new James Gunn Superman movie that's coming out. So we'll see. But
Hmm.
the bar has been set high. So now we get into that last episode. And the last episode, three parts. Part one breaks down with Superman having the rematch with Doomsday. We all knew it was coming. It was
Yep.
there. It did not disappoint. I know you might have fans. Oh, it didn't look a certain way, but hey, once again, when you got a budget cut and you still delivering, good on you. So Superman's fighting. He's training his sons. Then he has to start fighting Doomsday once again in Smallville on that same street. Followed by Lex Luthor stealing John Henry's armor,
Yep.
reprogramming it, and that's why on the outside it still looked like steel, but on the inside it had Luthor's favorite colors or his color scheme, which is green and purple.
Yep.
So all the gizmos are green and purple, and I thought that was a great shout out for Lex Luthor's battle armor because his battle armor is always green and purple.
Yep.
That's his colors, just like Bruce Banner. Go figure. So he's now fighting those two, trying to save the city, and he's taking his thumpings. And then you got Lois Lane in the city, and she's trying to get people out. And now, keep in mind, everyone in Smallville knows that the Clark family, all the males of the Clark family, are super powered. So at one point, the boys go to help Dad. Dad says, "Hey, this is my fight. Run away." And he's like, "But Dad, you couldn't beat him at your best, and now your heart is not the same way. How can you beat him?" Like, "I'll figure it out. You get out of here." Because as a father, the first thing you want to do, no matter the odds, is protect your children.
Yep. 100%.
Okay. Then the kids get back, see their mom, and the mom's like, "What are you doing here?" He's like, "Well, Dad told us to get people out of the way and do what we got to do." He's like, "No, y'all got powers. I see you now as men. I want to help your father." He's like, "Well, Mom, he didn't want her help. He yelled at us to come and do this." And she's like, "I'm telling you what to do," which comes down to a boy will always fear his mother. So off they go back. Keep in mind, out of this whole family, Lois Lane's powers is, determination and commanding, right? Like, okay, no one argued. The boys went back, and even when Superman was there, it's like, "What are you boys doing here?" And he's all battered up, and he's like, "Mom sent us back to help you." "Okay, boys, this is what we're gonna do." He didn't
Right.
argue.
Yeah. That there's no fighting.
You're
There's no point fighting.
Superman, right? And you didn't even argue that. Wait a minute. Your mother told you to come. You're the one out of this whole family, the one person without any powers is telling you you guys are coming back so we can deal with him, the guy who killed me last time. All right, there's no point in arguing. Let's do this. And they went about it as a united front to see all three of them take on Doomsday. And then they came in with, John Henry comes out with his gadgets, like a Tony Stark, and says, "Hey, I got this device that will turn around and can weaken him, and then we can crack Doomsday in the skull, kind of, knock him out, kill him per se." And then that's when Clark says, "Well, on our Earth, our sun makes me stronger, but it makes him weaker, right? Because he's from a different, universe, as you mentioned before, Rod. So the plan is, they talked a little bit too long, but he's like, hey, I'm going to take him, I'm going to fly him to the middle of the sun, and I'm going to melt him in the sun, and that is that. That's the end of Doomsday." And when he does that flight, he gets up there, he's just about there, and Doomsday, of course, wakes up. We're thinking it's another major slugfest that's coming out. And I'll say this, to your point, so being in a different universe does affect your perception and mind warping, right? And we've seen that when Clark went over to Bizarro World, his mind, his perception started getting weird, and then vice versa when Bizarro came to our world, it affected him that way. So his cognitive function and thinking was changed. Now that he's in front of the sun and his body's getting weaker, he starts to have his memory, his brain is clear, and that's how he took it. His brain was starting to clear up for the first time. And he remembered his wife from his universe, which was that Lois. So he remembered Bizarro Lois, Bizarro Jonathan, Bizarro Jordan, realized that world is gone, realizing he'll never see them again. And he just said, he pulled the, was it Kevin Costner move, where he puts the fist up and, hand up, and it's like, it's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay.
I understand what you're doing. It's okay.
I will go.
So here's the reason why I actually wanted to bring in the Bizarro aspect of it earlier, because of this. But I also wanted to point out is that every time Lex changed Bizarro into a harder, tougher individual, turned him slowly becoming a Doomsday, every time he woke up or he was rebirthed, he was still Bizarro until Lex attacked him, got his anger, because the more angry he came, he sounded like a Hulk in that sense. The more angry he came, and that said, he just went into more rage, and that just basically helped him manifest it into a bigger creature. Because the last time that he wasn't, like, he was still his angry self per se, but he was still very conscious of what he was doing. Where did they find him? They found him back at the pits, basically at the mines, trying to get back into his universe.
Yeah.
So to me, I took that as Bizarro / Doom understood who he was and realizing, I don't like what's going on. I need to get out. I need to get back to where I came from. So he wasn't bothering anybody. Because also prior to that, in that sense, the DOA knew where he was. They kept tabs on him, and they basically made it seem as though we know he's in the mines. He's in the mines, everybody. Just keep a parameter. And all that time, no one else from Smallville knew he was there. That means he wasn't causing a ruckus. He wasn't causing any issues. He was just trying to get himself back home. The DOA had surveillance in the sense like we knew he was there. That's how Lex knew he was there. So I took that because of his last transition, and when he came back and he calmed himself down, he was more conscious of himself, who he was. Yep. Listen, I may be exterior looking all buff and mad. I'm still, quote unquote, Bizarro Clark within. I need to get back home. So at this point, now that he's done the fight, he's enraged. All he's seeing is red. He's enraged. He's now knocked out dead. He's waking himself back up. I say it as he's reset himself, and that's when he's basically realizing, I realize what you're doing. I'm at the sun. I feel the heat in my back. I think you're trying to kill me. Because as soon as Clark realized he was awake, Clark would basically come up, give him the final one more blow just to push him back, and that's when he said, "I'll pull a Kevin Costner on you." What? Yeah, I'm pulling a Kevin Costner from another movie, sir. Just follow with it. I'm sure you saw the movie somewhere. You saw it on your Earth. Come on, we had it too. We had Kevin Costner. You had Kevin Costner. And that's when he goes into recollection of who he was, who he is, and what he stood for and how he was. And he realized, like, yeah, I understand this is the best for me. I would say I like to interject at this point that at a certain point with Clark's heart, who or what had happened to Clark's heart, having this his 60-year-old father-in-law, I took it prior to all this. I thought that maybe at some point they were going to before this is like from the episodes leading up to this last one because only in this last episode is when Lex found him. Sorry. Retract. Sorry. Coming up to the second to last, so like episode 8 is when they realized where he was, and episode 9 is when Lex rebirthed him again to get him angry like that. On to that point, we didn't know where Dooms was. I was
No,
thinking maybe they try to, you know,
same here.
somehow take his heart. But then I thought this after when he gave the Kevin Costner and said I'll float away. I realized at this point Clark has an augmented heart in him and is giving it a bad effect. So in my mind, although you may get a Kryptonian slash Bizarro heart, he will probably still have some type of issue. And now he's amalgamated to being such a bigger individual. It probably won't fit in his chest. Yada yada yada. It's not compatible. Yada yada yada. So I took it that you know what? Maybe they force thought this in the storeroom, which makes sense. We cannot use Doomsday's heart, so we're going to have to keep it as is. And again, we'll get to it later on. I know we're going long, but you'll see why it worked out for this particular universe. So Doomsday basically said, you know what? My bad. I'm sorry. I'm
Rest
going
in
to help you
peace.
out with your plan. I'm not going to fight you. And just floats back into the sun and just became a little heat was on his back and he just kind of like
You know, there's no
better wash it
SPF.
off.
There's no SPF 3000.
No, 3,000. No. Not like Love You 1,000 or 3,000 like, Iron Man. We won't get to that one. Okay,
True.
cool. Yeah.
So, I,
So, yeah.
so, and to your point, I thought they were going to use this hard also. Then I thought after it's like, yeah, they can't. There's no way to reverse engineer it. Okay, fine. So what's going to happen? So, Clark stays there and he starts absorbing the sun. Now, of course, I know he hears his sons call his name. I know it's space sounds not supposed to. Okay, it's a TV show. Let's let it roll, people. But he's there and he's absorbing the sun. He's absorbing as much solar power right from the source. So he's supercharged at this point.
You see, healing
Flies
up.
back
He's healing himself back up. Yep.
healing himself back up, powering himself back up, because he said, "Hey, on my best day, it's still John Henry's armor still can get the best of me." So he overcharged his battery, comes back, and deals with Lex. Now, of course, Lex had these like giant like kryptonite screws that he was throwing out to him, and one almost dug into his chest, just trying to destroy his heart again. And he's able to pull it out, deal with it. The suit fixes itself, and then Superman gives what I refer to as the punch of justice. The last time I seen
Punch
that,
of justice.
the punch of justice, the last time I see that was in Justice League Unlimited, where Superman was fighting Darkseid and he gave him this one punch, and then all the windows in blocks
Facts.
radius in Metropolis shattered from the
Facts.
force. And I saw the punch of justice. So Superman hits Lex so hard with this punch. Like he gave him a couple of words, he gave him 5 across the eyes, and then finally it's like, I've had enough of you messing with me. You almost killed my boys, right? Because the boys took some beatings. And you come in after my wife and gave him that one punch so hard, it separated him from the armor in midair.
The punch of justice.
Punch of
Let it,
justice.
let it be known.
Beautiful. All right. So we got a double fight. Doomsday, Lex in his power armor. It all settles down. Lex gets arrested. The truth is now out there. Lois has now got her credibility back as a reporter. The boys are good. Everything is fine. What happens next? This was only the first, with commercials, half an hour. That to me was like chapter 1. And then boom, it comes back, and all you hear is 1 year later. And I'm like, what? And sure enough, you're seeing now it's wrapping up storyline. So you're seeing that, Lana and John Henry get married. I mean, they were dating. It was going a certain way. They get married. You realize that Lana's husband, Kyle, is with his girlfriend, Chrissy, who works at the paper, and they are going to have their second child. And they have one baby who's a year, and it's a boy. Now, keep in mind, him and Lana had two girls, and now Chrissy, his new girlfriend, is she's had one boy and she's pregnant with a second one. So for
Yep.
Kyle, he's perfectly balanced. He's got two girls, two boys. We only saw this his second girl only showed up in a couple of episodes. As I said, they were part time. The
Yep.
one who plays his oldest daughter, she left Smallville. She went over around the world to Greece. So her and Jordan are stay as best friends. They dated and they stayed as best friends. He would use his powers, go and visit her, and so forth. And that was the 1 year later, and a lot of turning things and wrapping up storylines, and I like that. And then you're hearing now Clark talking, and he was narrating because the rest of the chapter 3 is where I think the heaviness comes in. So
Yeah.
chapter 1, the fights. Chapter 2, 1 year later, wrapping up storylines, seeing people getting their happy endings. Clark and Lana are still there, and Lois is there, and everyone's there, and then they have that nice iconic shot where it shows all of them. So Clark goes, he gets the two boys get their own super suits. So one gets a costume as Connor Kent, and one gets the other version of Connor Kent. So they get two different versions of the Superboy costume from the
Yep.
comic books. Awesome. So you got him flying, his boys are flying behind him, and then Steel shows up, and then Steel's daughter,
Not, yeah. Yep.
Nat, and I can't remember what her superhero name is right now. Because she does in the comic book have like armor too. So they
Mm,
all there, and it's a nice splash of all of them. I'm like, oh man, this is like their own version of the super family. Like, of course, missing
yeah.
members, missing Superman's brother from that TV universe, missing you know, who was the other one? So this, it didn't really get into some of the kids that got powers from season 1. They were inspired by Superman. So, that could have, but it made the Superman family right there. And Supergirl, the actress that played Supergirl, that would have been perfect
Yeah.
for her to
Yeah.
come in. But when you think about it, and what I read
She's
online
from
is
she's from another universe.
that's right. That's right. Now here comes the heartstrings.
Mm,
Chapter 3 is being narrated by Clark, and Clark turns around and says, "Hey, for the next 32 years, you know, my second death." And it's like, so his first death was at the hands of Doomsday. He's talking about his second death, and I'm like, what? Next 32 years, they do a whole montage, and this is where it gets really interesting. And they're good on the writers and the actors and everyone on staff for there. We see it starts talking about how Clark and Lois spent every day together. They tried to do things where it said feed the hungry. He wanted to do with his legacy, give hope. And there's a whole Superman story done by Alex Ross. And I think it was called Hope. It was like a giant size issue. And that there is where, to me, I think they got some of the influence from, right?
mm.
Where Superman's trying to feed the homeless and so forth, or it was Justice League. But go through and they do that. Awesome. Then you see the boys. And maybe not in this order. I mean, it's still a lot to unpack. So he's talking about that. And then, sorry, Lois's cancer.
Yeah.
You know,
Remission. She had a remission of her cancer.
she had a remission of
Yeah.
cancer. So during that time, the boys now grow up. So the two actors that played his teenage sons walk through the farm door. And then you see him kind of fade out, and it comes in two grown men. So now it shows his sons grown up into grown men. They're not teenagers anymore. They're grown men
Yep.
and still carried on with the family tradition. And then they get married and have kids of their own. So Clark and Lois see their grandkids.
Yeah.
All right, now let's put a pin in this for half a second. We go back before I go on. So keep in mind, the actor that plays Jonathan,
Mhm.
right? He had to be, obviously they made him, those two kids go out and they have two adults come in and take the role. The actor that plays the adult Jonathan is the husband of the actress that plays Lois Lane.
Really?
Yes, that's her husband. That's her husband. It's an article right here. She came in, they were cracking jokes on set, but that was her husband because her husband had this very similar look to the kid, Michael, who plays Jonathan Kent. So that's her real life husband.
That's funny. Okay.
Not
Let's
done
get
yet.
some. Oh boy. Oh
Not
boy.
done yet. The girl that plays the wife of Jordan,
Yeah.
right, is the stand in for Lois on the Superman and Lois show. So she's the stand-in for her.
Okay.
Not done yet. Then all the kids you see around are
Yep.
kids from the staff. So some of the executive,
Okay.
from some of the film crew, the sound crew, makeup people, that's their kids were playing the grandkids for Superman and Lois. So they really made it a family affair by bringing people that worked on this project for 4 seasons have camera time. So we
Nice.
got a husband, we got the stand-in, we got the kids from there to play all the grandkids. So like 7 grandkids they had because they had a lot of kids. And then we get Lois going into remission of cancer and passing away. The missing fact of that was they should have brought back I think his name Daryl, the one who played her father, right?
Oh
Because she transitioned. It would have been nice, or they could have just used a soundbite. Even if they
no,
used a
but but she mentioned him.
she mentioned him, but it would have been good for her to see him. And you know what I
Uh,
mean? Because
well, here's the reason why I know where you're going. The reason why I see why they didn't, because again, this has all been narrated from Clark's point of view.
yeah, true,
So
true,
so she
true.
that's why he said it was a nice surprise of hearing Lois. Her last words were saying, "Daddy." That means she saw her father just before
Right,
she passed.
right,
So
right,
to me,
right.
that was the opening for when he passes. What is Clark going to see? And that's
Yes,
why you can see as we go into it why to me that was mentioned, because you shouldn't mention that. They could still went through it, but it wouldn't have a more emotional pull. So at least I had an emotional pull with her seeing her father, the sacrifice that he did, and how much she loved him, and everything along that line. We can make that transition to, okay, well, Lois is passing over. Who does she see waiting for her? Her father,
absolutely. Okay, I got
coming
you.
from
I
Clark.
got you. I know it was really like scheduling too and all that. So, but that I thought was done. Like that hit the
Yeah.
heartstrings hard. And then he said, "Well, I still lived after Lois gone." He goes, "Every day I spent my
Oh,
time with Lois. We never apart for a day." Now they didn't really allude to it, but I'm guessing that Superman Clark did lose his powers, right? Because he said as time goes on, he would lose his powers, right? So if you watch that
yeah.
whole montage at one point, you never see him get dressed as Superman. You never see him go and fly nowhere,
Right.
right? You
Correct.
see kids coming to visit him. So I don't know if his grandkids actually will develop powers or not. That's a whole different theory conversation down the road.
Season five.
But
Season five. Season five.
season
Sorry.
5,
Who said
the
that?
legacy
Who said that?
continues.
Who said
The
that?
legacy of L, right? The legacy of L, the house of L. So we get he said his boys came by every day,
Hmm.
his friends came by every day to see him. And then he's walking. He goes, "Hey, I never had a dog." So he goes and gets himself a golden retriever. He goes, "For all the years I lived on the farm, I never had a dog." So after Lois passed, he needed something and someone to kind of keep him motivated. So he
Yep.
gets this golden retriever. I think it's golden retriever breed, and he calls him Crypto. So now we got Crypto
Hilarious.
in there, and Crypto was with him every day, and they would go for walks. And at one point, Superman or Clark Kent, he has a heart attack because he's got a 60-year-old heart. So he finally
Yep.
has a heart attack on the same street that his dad died on. Sorry, Jonathan Kent died on,
Yeah.
his adoptive father.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Man, it's ironic." But he was walking with Kyle. So now Kyle's retired. Kyle was what? Paramedic. Gave
Yep.
him CPR, saved him. But then Clark came to realize, like, hey, I don't have much time left. My time is growing near. And he accepted it. He's like, "I'm
Hmm.
lonely. My time is growing near." And then you see it kind of goes to him on his deathbed back at the house, right? So all this takes place, at his parents' farm. Uh, and then his sons are there, and they're there with him to his last moment till he passes. And the makeup artist did a great job by aging Tyler Hosh, you know, and giving him liver spots and the gray hair. And then you see him leave his body back as his young self, and he looks back and he sees his body as an old man with his kids there. And then he starts seeing his memories playing out. So he sees his boys as younger. The boys aren't dead. It's just as because they've left being teenagers, he's gone back to being younger. That image of his boys being teenagers has died because
Yep.
they're now grown men. So he sees them. He sees Lex Luthor as an old man. I'm like, okay, great. Uh, he's seeing the important people that were important to his life, and that was family. And then finally, the boys go and open the front door, the spiritual boys open this front door, and there's Lois in that red dress he talks
Yep.
about her wearing so much, and they
Yep.
embrace, and that's how they ended it. So it was a great way how they explained his powers going away, his mission that he tried to do besides stopping criminals, to choke you up, and then him's passing because he passed away 32 years later. So figure he passed away in his could have been his 70s, maybe his 80s, right?
Right.
Roughly.
Yep.
So it hits. And I'll say this: I like the fact that the writers, and we'll get close to wrapping the show up, but the writers took a lot of influences from great storylines, as I said before. So if you want to
Mm-hmm.
understand maybe some of these as a pulp version of these, obviously you got to read, I think a good run was the Man of Steel. That was John Bryan. I mean, of course, read the original, but the Man of Steel miniseries by John Bryan with Superman and him coming back and that run. You have to get in, of course, the death of Superman without
Yep.
fail. But then you
Yep.
got to get into the Alan Moore, the Man of Tomorrow. It was a one
Mm.
shot
Yep.
book called The Man of Tomorrow. And that book, was it showed Superman's last adventure, what happened, or is no the Man of Tomorrow, or the death of the Man of Tomorrow, something
Okay.
you see it here on the screen, and that storyline explains how Superman died, and it's
Mm-hmm.
very funny that Alan Moore read it well. So Superman goes to the fortress, goes through all these things, and then he ends up dying, and he kind of exposes himself. He goes into the Fortress of Solitude. He walks into the room, exposes himself to all forms of kryptonite, and goes about his business. And everyone's like, well, Superman died that day because, all his enemies are trying to attack him at the fortress. He was trying to keep all his loved ones alive. So that's Jimmy, Lana, Lois, of course. And then the story ends. And of course, when that comic book ends, and once again, spoiler, you get to the end of that issue and you see it's Lois Lane that's talking to a reporter because it's the anniversary, like how many 20 years later or something like that, that Superman died and she's been living. And it's like, how'd you move on? She's like, well, I've been married to this guy now and everything's cool. And then you see the guy come out and it's like, oh, here's my husband. And the reporter leaves. And as fans, you're reading the book, it's like, looks a lot like Clark. And she got a type, right? And then he starts talking and she mentions it. It's like, so you don't regret losing your powers? And he's like, not at all. So it's Clark Kent. So Clark Kent survived, but he exposed himself to gold kryptonite, which took away his powers,
Right.
came back, and him and Lois led a normal life. And he changed his name from Clark Kent to a different name. I'm not sure if he became a firefighter. And they have a kid. And when they go in the room and they're just talking amongst themselves, their little baby is sitting there on the floor playing with toys, and then the baby starts to float because it's half Kryptonian. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. So those are absolute must reads, in my
Yeah.
opinion, if you want to see the influence of, especially in other ones we've talked about here, the Alex Ross one with Superman story. Beautiful. So, for a limited budget, a lot of obstacles that the cast, the crew had to face. And what an amazing story. James Gunn, good luck to you, man. You got to step your game up. This is proper writing. Like people dump on DC saying Marvel's been doing better. And the TV shows
This
been
is
really better than the movies. Like Warner Brothers, you got to look at your TV product.
yeah, that's always been the scenario with me, that the writing has always been better. Now, I would like to say that as much as I'm so hurt and disappointed that this is the last season, I am very glad that this was announced at the beginning of this season, because most
Yes.
times these things don't happen until they go away. Season done. Hey, all right, guys, we'll see you next season. Let's go. Let's go somewhere for the summer, just the holiday, whatever. Just to let you know, you won't be coming back in September. What? And everybody, messed up. So there goes, like, oh, we had plans to we could have wrap it up. So I'm quite happy that, as much as annoying that we have the final season, I am so happy were that they were informed with enough time to create a proper story that basically made a beautiful end off. So this is it's a rarity of a series
Yeah.
that you actually have the opportunity to have such a proper send off, have a closure, have closure. Because that's really what it is. There's a lot of
Yeah.
shows that we love growing up and listening to, even to these days, that, shows are great, and all of a sudden, whoop, it's cut. I'm like, fans are, are upset, pained because there's no closure. You had to have like Firefly back and make a movie to make closure. You know what I mean? You had to do stuff along that line
At
to
least you
come
got
back.
that. I was all into that TV show, Treadstone, that was off the Jason Bourne universe, and
Understand?
it was supposed to come back in season 2, and like, no, we're not coming back, and they left it on a cliffhanger.
Yeah, 100%. That's the 30-second annoyance. It's nearly to the point you want to write every season with an ending with the aha and open back up again. To me, that'd be the best
We're
way.
still here. Yep,
Yeah, we're still
absolutely.
here.
Absolutely. So I think this was like a well done thing. I mean, as I said, if you have to look at storytelling in a superhero genre, that's how you that's really good. It wasn't dark. He inspired hope. It was all about legacy behind and in front of the camera on both sides from all parties. What a send off to a hero that was portrayed. And it wasn't like, oh, he died and people lived on after him and remembering him. No, he lived. He got his long life happy ending, and here we are. So
Yeah.
there we go,
Yeah.
Rod. There we go, everyone.
Mm.
Brings us to another episode. This time we're not doing a season finale. No, we're still going. But for Lois and Clark, it was awesome. And a lot of Easter eggs. Like what I caught was Lois and Clark at the beginning, they have their logo, they put it at the beginning of the show. But when this show ended,
You
they
saw
had
that.
just a gold S,
You
which
saw
was
that.
like an homage to something, from the comic books there. So pick up your books, people. Rod, any last words?
Listen, as we said earlier, if you're enjoying what you're hearing, hit that like, subscribe, send this link, send it off, tell a friend to tell a friend. This was a great episode. I definitely enjoy having the opportunities to talk about this show. Again, like we said, we don't normally go into like the top three big boys, the big people, the bats, the soups, and the wonders. Woman! But this is a show that we had to at least, be able to, just say our, what we like about it. And I appreciate it. And I'm glad that we had the opportunity. And I hope you guys enjoyed it as well.
Absolutely. I echo those thoughts and those sentiments 100%. And on that note, this whole world was started by a pencil, a piece of paper, and lots of imagination. Keep on dreaming and never let a budget stop you from what you need to do. All right, there we go. Stay inspired. Oh, woman. Not super baby because I ain't changing those papers. All right, cool.
No.
Well,
Well,